Jumanji didn't start with a roar. It began with a whisper that refused to stay quiet. A story about playtime gone wrong became a jungle that tore through the walls. But beneath the laughter and the lightning, it was imagination out for blood. The story Hollywood tried to bury until the vines clawed their way out. The heartbeat of the jungle kept alive by Robin Williams. Wild, wounded, unstoppable. And the game that vanished for decades before rolling again. Louder, stranger, still hungry. These are 20 weird facts about Jumanji, where the jungle never sleeps and the game never ends. Number 1. The jungle didn't start with a movie. It started with a kid who got bored. Chris Van Allsburg grew up loving board games, until one day he realized they were all lies. "You play Monopoly," he said, "and when it's over, all you have is fake money." He wanted more, something real. So he imagined a game that didn't end when you closed the box, one that spilled out, filled your home, and refused to stop until you faced it. That thought, born out of boredom and imagination, became Jumanji, a story about control shattered, about what happens when childhood play turns into survival. Every dice roll, every rule, every sound of those drums became a heartbeat for chaos. And behind it all was Van Allsburg's simple rebellion against the ordinary. Proof that even frustration can spark the wildest adventures. Number 2. Before it became a Hollywood adventure, Jumanji began as a quiet picture book sitting on a shelf, written and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg in 1981. It told the story of two children who discover a board game that brings the jungle to life, turning their calm suburban home into a storm of vines, lions, and panic. But behind those watercolor pages was a deeper vision. Van Allsburg wanted to capture that moment when imagination breaks loose, when play stops being pretend and becomes power. He described it as chaos invading the calm, a metaphor for childhood itself, wild, unpredictable, and unstoppable once it begins. Hollywood tried to adapt it throughout the 1980s, but every version flattened the wonder into cliché adventure. Scripts were too flashy, too Los Angeles, as Van Allsburg put it. He rejected them all, until director Johnston invited him to help rebuild the story from the ground up. Together, they returned to the book's heart, a jungle tearing through the illusion of control, forcing people to face the wildness they'd buried inside. That contrast, safety versus storm, order versus imagination, is what made Jumanji timeless. Because in Van Allsburg's world, the most dangerous adventures aren't out there. They're waiting inside the games we play. Number 3. Jumanji. Strange, rhythmic, and wild on the tongue, wasn't made up. It comes from the Zulu word for many effects, or many consequences. Van Allsburg stumbled on it while searching for a name that sounded magical yet ominous, not realizing how prophetic it was. Because in Jumanji, every choice ripples. Every roll rewrites the world. One moment brings monkeys in the kitchen, the next floods the living room. The name itself became a promise, and a curse, that nothing in the game would ever happen in isolation. Every effect would lead to another. Every action would demand a price. And once you said the name out loud, the game had already begun. Number 4. Before Jumanji, no one had ever seen a jungle crawl through a living room. To make the impossible believable, Industrial Light and Magic didn't just use digital tools, they invented them. The film's creatures required technology that didn't yet exist, so ILM engineers built new software from scratch, nicknamed iSculpt, allowing animators to control facial expressions and muscle movements frame by frame. The result was revolutionary. The monkeys, once adorable in sketches, became a nightmare of motion and reflection, so realistic that test audiences flinched. The lion's mane required the first fully dynamic digital hair system, calculating light, wind, and even breath. Every shadow was art. Every twitch, a breakthrough. Jumanji didn't just show a jungle invading a house. It marked the moment when computer graphics finally learned how to feel alive. Number 5. When young Peter rolls the wrong number, the jungle strikes back, turning him into a monkey. But what the audience didn't see was the real battle behind the camera. Actor Bradley Pierce was only 12, and his transformation wasn't digital. It was painstaking prosthetics. Every morning for nearly 70 days, he sat in the makeup chair for 3.5 hours, while artists layered on fur, latex, and paint, building a hybrid face that was half boy, half beast. The glue burned, the mask itched, the lights made it unbearable. But Robin Williams saw it all. Having endured his own hours under prosthetics for Mrs. Doubtfire, he sat with Bradley, cracking jokes and helping him push through. By the time the cameras rolled, the kid wasn't pretending anymore. He was the frightened boy trapped between two worlds. That realism, born from patience and pain, made Peter's transformation one of the film's most haunting moments. Number 6. The chaos of Jumanji ends with peace. A snowy Christmas morning where the nightmare is undone. But what most fans don't know is that it was the very first scene ever filmed. Director Johnston made that call for a simple reason. The parish mansion wouldn't survive production. The floods, dust, and jungle vines would destroy everything by the time filming wrapped. So the crew shot the after before the before. The house pristine, the cast unscarred, the peace captured while it still existed. Then they unleashed hell. Monsoons drowned the living room. Walls cracked, ceilings fell, fell. Vines tore through stairways. By the final day, the house looked like it had survived an apocalypse. It's poetic. The story that begins with ruin was filmed in reverse, ending in serenity before chaos ever began. In Jumanji, even the timeline plays by its own rules. Number 7. Before the jungle roared to life, Jumanji existed only as a quiet, strange script, beautiful on paper, but cold in spirit. Chris Van Allsburg's early draft stayed close to his picture book, more surreal than emotional. When Robin Williams read it, he said no. He didn't want another spectacle. He wanted something human. So TriStar Pictures went back to the drawing board. Writers Jonathan Hensley, Greg Taylor, and Jim Strain rebuilt the story from the ground up, crafting Alan Parrish as a man broken by fear and regret, a child lost in time, desperate for redemption. When Robin read the new draft, he finally said yes. What began as a tale of monsters and mayhem became a story about facing your past, forgiving yourself, and finding courage again. The magic wasn't just in the game, it was in the heart beating beneath it. Number 8. Before Robin Williams rolled the dice, Jumanji almost belonged to another legend, Tom Hanks. Director Joe Johnston saw him as the perfect Alan Parrish, a man who could balance wonder with tragedy. Hanks loved the concept, but passed to focus on Apollo 13. That single decision changed cinematic history. Robin Williams stepped in, reshaping the tone of the entire film. His Alan wasn't just lost in the jungle, he was lost in time, broken but still hopeful. Between takes, he'd improvise, soften dialogue, and add small gestures of humanity that made the film soar. He brought comedy to the terror, sorrow to the spectacle, and heart to the chaos. Jumanji didn't just need an actor, it needed a soul, and Robin gave it one. Number 9. Most audiences never notice it at first, but the man who terrifies young Alan Parrish and the one who hunts him years later share the same face. Jonathan Hyde plays both Samuel Parrish, Alan's strict father, and Van Pelt, the ruthless hunter unleashed by the game. That choice wasn't an accident, it was allegory. The film's true villain wasn't the jungle, it was fear itself. Van Pelt embodied everything Alan ran from: his father's discipline, his own shame, the expectations he couldn't live up to. When Alan finally confronts him, he isn't just fighting a hunter, he's fighting the shadow of his childhood. It's subtle, but it's Jumanji's emotional heartbeat, a fantasy wrapped around a truth every adult understands. Sooner or later, you have to face the thing that raised your fears. Number 10. For Robin Williams, Jumanji wasn't just another fantasy adventure, it was personal. The fractured bond between Alan Parrish and his father mirrored parts of Robin's own childhood. In interviews, he described his dad as a bit stern, kind of elegant, but underneath that distance was love forged by hardship. His father had once lost everything after his own father's death, forced to work in a Pennsylvania strip mine before rebuilding his life. That story stayed with Robin. When he played Alan, a boy terrified of disappointing his father, he channeled those same complicated emotions: fear, admiration, and longing for approval. It's why Alan's final words to Van Pelt,
"You should always face what you're afraid of,"
carry more than defiance. They carry forgiveness. Beneath all the vines and chaos, Jumanji was Robin Williams' quiet way of saying goodbye to the boy he used to be. Number 11. At just 12 years old, Kirsten Dunst was already a veteran. She danced with vampires, wept through Little Women, and faced Tom Cruise before facing the jungle. On Jumanji, she became the calm in the storm, confident, focused, and fearless. While her co-star Bradley Pierce was still learning the ropes, Dunst often helped guide him through complex effects shots and emotional beats. Sometimes even matching Robin Williams' energy in improvisation. Crew members said she carried herself like a grown-up trapped in a child's body, mirroring her character Judy's strength perfectly. Amid stampedes, floods, and CGI chaos, it was Kirsten who grounded the magic in something real, a kid who'd already learned how to act with truth. She didn't just survive Jumanji, she commanded it. Number 12. Before Lost in Translation, before Black Widow, a young Scarlett Johansson stepped into a small casting room to read for Jumanji. She was bright, eager, and unpolished, a spark waiting for the right flame. Across from her sat Kirsten Dunst, already seasoned, already steady. Both delivered the same lines: fear, wonder, disbelief. But where Johansson had raw promise, Dunst had presence. The role went to Kirsten, launching her toward global stardom. Johansson's audition, meanwhile, vanished into obscurity, until it resurfaced online years later, a haunting glimpse of what could have been. Two young actresses, one role, one fork in the road. One became Judy Shepard, the other a future Avenger. And somewhere in that tiny room, Hollywood quietly shifted its course. Number 13. Before Bonnie Hunt became the heart of Jumanji, nearly every major actress of the late 80s and early 90s took a swing at Sarah Whittle. Julia Roberts, Meg Ryan, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jamie Lee Curtis, even Madonna were all on the shortlist. Each brought a different energy: glamorous, tough, fragile, fierce. But none of them quite fit the balance of fear and humor that Sarah needed. Then Bonnie walked in. Her warmth disarmed the room. Her chemistry with Robin Williams was instant, playful, sharp, deeply human. In a film filled with chaos and CGI mayhem, she grounded everything in emotion. She wasn't just Alan's childhood crush, she was his tether to the real world. And when the dice finally stopped rolling, it was Bonnie Hunt who reminded audiences that love, not luck, is what brings you home. Number 14. Before he was trapped inside a cursed board game, Bradley Pierce had already made audiences cry as the voice of Chip the Teacup in Beauty and the Beast. That gentle tremble in his voice, curious, kind, always hopeful, became his signature.
Mama, there's a girl in the castle.
On Jumanji, he brought that same innocence to Peter Shepard, the boy who tries to be brave when the world turns wild. He'd already spent years behind the mic, learning how to make emotion live in sound, so when the CGI chaos erupted around him, he never looked lost. Even as vines ripped through sets and animatronics lunged from the shadows, Pierce stayed steady, a performer who understood that real magic comes from honesty, not effects. From an enchanted castle to a living jungle, Bradley's voice became the bridge between imagination and heart, the sound of childhood itself. Number 15. When the dust finally settled, Jumanji left behind one prop more powerful than any special effect: the board itself. Hand-carved wood, resin tiles, and magnetic dice gave it a sense of weight and danger, like it really wanted to be played. Decades later, one of the original game boards resurfaced at a Hollywood auction. Fans battled for it like players trapped in the story it created. The final roll landed at $63,000, a small fortune for a cursed box that never stopped whispering. Today, that prop sits in a private collection, polished and preserved, but its legend still hums through movie history. Because Jumanji wasn't just a game, it was temptation carved in wood, daring anyone brave enough to roll the dice again. Number 16. Behind the chaos, the stampedes, and the thunder of CGI beasts, there was one constant heartbeat on set: Robin Williams. His laughter wasn't background noise, it was oxygen. Between takes, he filled the soundstage with impressions, mimicking Jodie Foster's Nell ordering fast food or turning even technical delays into comedy routines. Crew members said that when Robin walked in, tension vanished, but his kindness went deeper than jokes. On the final day of filming, he gave each cast and crew member a hardbound copy of the Jumanji script, signed, personalized, and filled with messages that made grown adults tear up. He didn't just lead the movie, Bonnie Hunt recalled, he led with love. In a film about surviving chaos, Robin Williams showed everyone what grace looked like: the calm inside the storm. Number 17. When Jumanji hit theaters in December 1995, it walked straight into a storm. Critics were divided, unsure if it was too dark for kids or too silly for adults. It opened the same month as Toy Story, Heat, and GoldenEye, and few expected a film about a cursed board game to survive that lineup. But then the drums started beating. Families packed theaters. Kids begged for second showings. Robin Williams' mix of chaos and heart drew laughter and tears in equal measure. By New Year's Eve, Jumanji had clawed its way into the box office top 10, earning more than $262 million worldwide on a $65 million budget, a jungle-sized win no one saw coming. It was more than numbers. It was proof that imagination could still triumph over technology, that audiences still wanted stories built on wonder, not cynicism. And when it hit VHS, it exploded all over again, rewound, rewatched, and rediscovered in living rooms everywhere. The critics had doubted it, but the audience knew better. The jungle had spoken, and it roared loud enough to echo for decades. Number 18. When the credits stopped in theaters, Jumanji kept playing, this time on Saturday mornings. From 1996 to 1999, Jumanji, the animated series, pulled kids straight into the board itself. Every episode, Judy and Peter were sucked into the game's wild universe to help Alan Parrish escape his endless nightmare. The show expanded the mythology far beyond the film, introducing new creatures, forgotten players, and unseen corners of the jungle. It even hinted that the game might be alive, learning from its players. Fans who grew up on the cartoon later realized the 2017 reboot, Welcome to the Jungle, borrowed its biggest idea, that Jumanji doesn't trap you in your house, it traps you in itself. The board may have closed, but the game never really ended. Number 19. When that board washed up on a beach in 1995, every kid in the theater felt it. Jumanji wasn't over. But Hollywood didn't roll the dice again for more than 2 decades. Scripts came and went. Studios hesitated. Even when Sony announced a remake in 2012, fans, and Peter actor Bradley Pierce, called it unnecessary. Then, tragedy struck. After Robin Williams' passing, the project was quietly shelved. But Jumanji has a way of calling players back. In 2017, the game returned, not as a remake, but a rebirth. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, swapped dice for consoles, blending nostalgia with reinvention. Against all odds, it became one of Sony's biggest hits, earning nearly $1 billion. A sequel followed, proving what the story had always said: the game never really ends, it just waits for someone brave enough to play again. Number 20. In Keene, New Hampshire, the game never stopped echoing. The Parish Shoes sign still hangs above Main Street, faded, weathered, but untouched since Jumanji filmed there in in 1995. For years, it was a quiet relic. Then, on August 11th, 2014, the town woke to heartbreaking news. Robin Williams was gone. Locals gathered beneath that old sign, leaving candles, flowers, and handwritten notes. Down the street, the Colonial Theater lit up once more, hosting a memorial screening where laughter and tears filled the same air. It wasn't just a tribute, it was a reunion. The town and the actor who'd brought magic to their streets meeting one last time. In Keene, the jungle never fades. It simply waits, softly beating, for its next roll of the dice. Bonus fact, beyond its sequels, Jumanji changed the rhythm of adventure movies forever. It bridged the gap between practical and digital, blending handcrafted sets with groundbreaking CGI, a blueprint for films like Night at the Museum and Zathura. It also shifted the moral core of family adventure. Courage wasn't about fighting monsters, it was about facing yourself. For millions of kids, Jumanji wasn't just a movie, it was a dare, a lesson whispered beneath the jungle's drums. Once you start playing, you can't stop. You have to finish. And maybe that's why it still calls to us, decades later. Because deep down, we all still want to hear the dice roll one more time. When the last echo of those jungle drums faded, Jumanji didn't disappear. It became part of us. It taught a generation that imagination can be dangerous, that courage isn't about winning, and that some adventures never truly end. From Chris Van Allsburg's quiet picture book to Robin Williams' Wild Heart, and every reboot that followed us, the story kept evolving. A game passed down through time, reshaped for every player brave enough to roll. Because Jumanji was never just about magic dice or jungle chaos. It was about what happens when we stop running from life and start playing it for real. If this story still beats in your memory, drop a comment. Tell us what legendary world we should step into next. Because somewhere, deep inside that carved wooden box, the drums are still waiting, soft, steady, calling for the next player to listen and play.